I want to start by saying something I've realized after being married for a while. My wife is basically my boss. And the funny part is, nobody warned me about this before the wedding. They just told me it would be romantic. I'd have someone to share my life with. They didn't say, oh, and by the way, your spouse will run performance reviews on everything you do daily and silently. It's like I'm in this weird full-time position where the job description keeps changing. The deadlines are invisible, and the benefits are hugs sometimes if I qualify. And the weirdest part is, I'm constantly trying to figure out if I'm passing the evaluation. She doesn't even need to say anything. She just raises one eyebrow, and I immediately feel guilty. That's how I know I'm in trouble. That's how I know she's the CEO of this household. Oh, it starts with the little things. I'll leave a dish on the counter, and suddenly it's a full performance review. Why is this here? She asks. It's not a question, it's an audit. I start explaining myself like I'm giving a quarterly financial report. Well, this dish was here because I used it, and I didn't have time to wash it. And I think it might have been hiding under the edge of the counter butt. And she just looks at me. That look is the kind of look that makes you realize all your spreadsheets, all your excuses, all your good intentions, irrelevant. She's the boss. The metric isn't effort. The metric is compliance. And I never know if I'm compliant. Then there's the scheduling. You think you know what your day looks like, right? Nope. My wife schedules things I didn't even know existed. She'll say, we need to be there at 7:15. Don't forget the paperwork. And I'm standing there thinking, paperwork? What paperwork? Suddenly, my life has meetings I didn't know were scheduled, tasks I didn't know were assigned, evaluations I didn't know I was being graded on. And she's calm, professional, and efficient like she's running a Fortune 500 company. I'm the guy who just showed up hoping nobody noticed I wore mismatched socks. Then you get into directives. She'll give instructions like a manager in a training video. I don't realize I've been under instruction until 5 minutes later. Could you make sure the living room looks nicer? She says casually. I think, sure, no problem. And later, I find out there were specific angles for the pillows, particular mugs that should or should not be visible. Even the lighting needs to be adjusted just so. It's like she sent me into a task without giving me the full scope of the project. And I'm standing there sweating, realizing I'm simultaneously the employee, the intern, and the unpaid consultant in her company of one. And snacks, oh man, snacks are the HR department. You don't just take a cookie. You check in first. You confirm availability. You ensure compliance. She'll appear out of nowhere, clipboard in mind, like she's reviewing my snack decisions in real time. I'll eat something thinking it's fine, and she'll appear like a surprise audit. Was this snack scheduled? And I'm like, thought it was an acceptable expense. Suddenly, eating a cookie feels like corporate fraud. And then comes feedback. Feedback is the worst part. My wife is efficient with feedback. She doesn't yell. She doesn't rant. She just says, need to talk about the dishwasher. And I'm immediately imagining 30-page report detailing every single time I've loaded the dishwasher incorrectly. Didn't even know incorrect loading was a thing. I thought plates just go in the rack. But no. Apparently there are standards. Standards I have no idea exist, but she knows and she remembers every violation. And the crazy thing is, every time I think I finally understand her management style, she updates it. Like she releases a new policy overnight, Silently, I'm the only one who has to follow it. She's a CEO, a manager, and a very specific compliance officer, all in one. Somehow I'm still employed, still here, still hoping the next review includes coffee as a perk. And the thing is, I love it. I love her. And I also know she could fire me at any moment, not from the house, but from the illusion that I'm competent. And I'm standing there, still trying to make sure my socks match, because apparently that's the next performance review. Marriage is wild, because you never realize that every little thing you do is under review. With my wife, it feels like she's constantly conducting surprise performance evaluations. I'll be standing in the kitchen, casually putting a cup in the dishwasher, and suddenly she appears behind me like a corporate auditor. She doesn't even need to say anything. One look, one tilt of the head, and I know immediately that I'm in trouble. I start thinking through my life choices, trying to figure out if this is just about the cup or if it's about all the cups I've ever used, stacked neatly in the invisible file cabinet of my marriage career. It's like living in a workplace where the boss has perfect recall and also perfect timing, and somehow you're always one step behind. And that's the joke. She doesn't even have to speak to make me feel guilty. I'm the one doing the full confession like I'm at a corporate tribunal. The funniest part is that the rules aren't explained. Nobody handed me a manual, didn't get an employee handbook titled, How Not to Anger Your Spouse. I thought marriage would be about teamwork, love, and compromise, but really it's about invisible rules that I didn't know existed. The first time she said, "We need to talk about the living room," I genuinely thought she was going to tell me she wanted new furniture. Turns out, it was a detailed audit of the throw pillows, the angle of the couch, and whether the blanket fold aligned with company protocol. I didn't even know blankets had a protocol. I stood there trying to justify my fold like a guy in a training video, whispering, "I did my best, gravity made it this way," and she just looked at me. That look, that's the one that says, "You failed, but we'll keep you on the payroll for now." And it's not just big things. It's the tiniest, most mundane items that trigger these surprise evaluations. Socks on the floor, cups left out. Even the wrong pen on the table can suddenly become a violation. I start overthinking everything, walking around like I'm tiptoeing through a minefield. She'll casually mention something from 3 years ago, something I had long forgotten, and suddenly I'm apologizing for a crime I didn't even remember committing. Audience laughs because everyone can relate to being judged for seemingly inconsequential things. Nate's genius is pointing out that the stakes feel much higher in marriage. Every little action has weight. You're constantly calculating whether you've met the invisible standard, which makes ordinary life hilarious, because you never know when the next evaluation will happen. I could be sipping coffee, reading the newspaper, and boom, audit. She'll appear out of nowhere and ask something seemingly innocent like, "Why is the spoon here?" And my brain immediately goes into panic mode. I start giving a report worthy of a Fortune 500 company, explaining exactly why the spoon is in its current location, analyzing it from every possible perspective, even suggesting solutions for the future. Meanwhile, she's just standing there, calm, efficient, knowing full well she has me exactly where she wants me, nervous, over-explaining, and completely under her control. It's funny, it's exhausting, and it's the ultimate hook because viewers instantly recognize themselves in this chaos. You're always one step behind, trying to meet expectations you didn't know existed, laughing at how absurdly serious your spouse makes it all. You think you're just living life, but really, you're under constant review. And somehow, that's exactly what keeps it interesting, terrifying, and hilarious all at once. One of the funniest parts of marriage is realizing that the rules you didn't know existed suddenly matter more than anything else in the universe. My wife has this incredible ability to make everything seem like it has a specific purpose. My job, though I didn't apply for it, is to follow all of her rules perfectly without ever being told what they are in advance. It starts with something as simple as the placement of household items. I'll put a mug on the counter thinking, that seems like a fine place, and she'll appear out of nowhere, calm as ever, and ask, why is this here? And in that moment, realize I'm not just being questioned, I'm being evaluated on a whole, invisible metric system that I never signed up for. I start trying to justify it like I'm in a performance review. Well, I thought it was convenient. It aligns with other items in the vicinity and also gravity. And she just looks at me, one eyebrow raised, silently judging my incompetence. The audience immediately connects with this because we've all felt that silent scrutiny in one form or another. It escalates quickly. Something as simple as arranging throw pillows or folding a blanket becomes a high-stakes test. She'll casually mention, the blanket looks a little off, and I'll panic. Off? What does that even mean? I didn't realize blankets had a right way to exist in the house. Suddenly, I'm analyzing the texture, the angle, even the air currents in the room as I attempt to fix it. And the kicker is, every time I think I've corrected it, she introduces a new variable. Maybe a pillow needs to be rotated 30 degrees. Maybe the blanket fold is only acceptable if the sunlight hits it at a particular angle in the morning. I never knew living spaces had policies until marriage. It's like I accidentally signed a contract to become a full-time compliance officer in someone else's perfectly run household. Comes the humor of snacks and hidden agendas. I think I'm being clever, grabbing a cookie or a bag of chips, assuming it's mine to consume freely.
Wrong.
Snacks are carefully monitored. She'll appear with the precision of an HR manager and ask, and now I'm trying to recall every detail of my snack strategy like it's a corporate project proposal. Did I inform her in advance that I intended to eat it? Did I consider the other stakeholders? I didn't even know there were stakeholders. And this is the beauty of the comedy. It's absurd, yet relatable. Everyone has had moments where something minor suddenly feels monumental because of someone else's expectations. Nate's genius is exaggerating that tension into a hilarious narrative. And communication becomes a test of its own. She'll issue instructions that sound perfectly normal, but carry hidden layers. Could you make sure the living room looks nice? Seems simple until you realize looks nice, has precise parameters, the right pillows, the perfect blanket fold, even the correct angle of sunlight, if possible. I try to comply, but inevitably, something is always off. And that's what keeps the audience laughing, because they recognize the struggle. No matter how hard you try, you can never fully meet the invisible expectations that make up the rules of marriage. What keeps this segment engaging is the unpredictability. You never know which rule will surface next. 1 minute it's a coffee cup. The next, it's the exact placement of a remote control. As I stumble through these invisible regulations, the audience stays hooked, wondering what will she audit next. What tiny, seemingly insignificant act will suddenly require a full explanation? Every moment is a setup for another punchline, another observation, another perfectly relatable joke about trying and failing to meet standards that exist only in the mind of your spouse. Snacks in marriage are not what you think they are. They're basically HR audits disguised as food. I'll be standing in the kitchen thinking I'm just being a normal adult, grabbing a cookie or a piece of chocolate, and suddenly she appears like she has a sixth sense for snack crimes. She doesn't even need to say anything. The look alone makes me feel like I've committed grand larceny. And that's the funny part. Snacks that used to be simple, casual, harmless, suddenly carry the weight of invisible rules and policies that I never agreed to. It's like living in a workplace where every candy bar has a project manager, and I didn't even know I was hired. I start overthinking, like, did I get approval for this cookie? Should I have filed a request first? There are protocol for chocolate consumption. The audience immediately relates because we've all had those little domestic moments that somehow feel like life or death situations. The timing of snack inspections is impeccable. I could be mid-bite, feeling proud of myself, and she will appear out of nowhere, calm, collected, and slightly amused, and ask something like, "Is this planned?" And my brain immediately goes into emergency mode. I start analyzing every possible scenario. Maybe she meant, was it planned for the weekend? Or was it planned for the guests we don't have yet? Maybe this cookie was reserved for a celebration I forgot existed. The more I think, the more I realize I have no idea how these rules work. Snacks in marriage are like stealth tests. You don't even know you're being graded until the moment it's too late. They're smart, and the humor comes from my utter confusion while trying to appear innocent. It gets better because it's not just the eating itself, it's the reporting. In my mind, I've been completely transparent. I assume taking a cookie at 200 p.m. is a basic human right, but she treats it like a full-blown transaction requiring documentation and approval. And the way she delivers, it is perfect comedy. She doesn't yell, she doesn't nag, she just asks calmly, and suddenly the entire room feels like a courtroom. I start giving explanations like a CFO presenting quarterly results. I grabbed it because I was hungry, but I considered the other snacks in the pantry. And also, the cookies packaging suggested it was ready for consumption. And she just listens, expressionless, perfectly silent, while I spiral. The audience laughs because they recognize that moment. Trying to defend a simple action and realizing the rules are completely arbitrary. Then there's the hierarchy of snacks. Not all snacks are created equal, apparently. Some are for later, some are for guests, some are special emergency rations, and I never know which category anything falls into. One day the chips are fair game. The next day, they're suddenly off limits because they weren't approved for Tuesday consumption. And the rules don't make sense. There's no manual, there's no orientation. Every snack comes with invisible expectations that I have to navigate, which makes normal life feel absurd and hilarious at the same time. And the real kicker is the consistency. She remembers every snack I've ever eaten in my life. She'll reference one from 3 weeks ago with perfect recall, and I'll start sweating, wondering what unseen violation I committed. I can't hide anything, because apparently, in marriage, snacks of memory, and she has a photographic memory. And as I try to navigate these snack audits, the audience stays hooked, waiting to see which bite, which bag, or which cookie will become the next comedic disaster. Every time I think I've finally figured it out, a new rule appears, a new expectation emerges, and I'm back in panic mode, completely overthinking what should have been a simple pleasure. Communication in marriage is a whole different level of corporate strategy. And my wife is the CEO while I'm still figuring out how to turn on the coffee machine. She doesn't just talk, she delivers instructions with precision, clarity, a level of detail that makes me feel like I'm being trained for NASA. I'll ask a simple question like, "What do you want for dinner?" And she'll answer with 3 layers of meaning, hidden assumptions, and implied consequences. Suddenly, I realize I'm not just choosing a meal, I'm navigating a full-scale project with timelines, budgets, risk assessments, and the best part is she never raises her voice. She doesn't need to. The calm tone, the slight tilt of her head, the emphasis on one single word, all of it communicates more than any yelling ever could. The audience immediately connects because everyone has been in that situation where someone speaks normally. You know perfectly well that every word is a test, a measure of your competence, and a challenge to your very existence. The humor comes from my inability to decode these layers. She'll say something like, "Could you make sure the living room looks nice before the guests arrive?" And my brain freezes. Nice. That's a relative term. Are we talking pillows aligned, blankets folded, or is the carpet angle acceptable? I'll spend 10 minutes measuring the couch cushions, adjusting the throw pillows, even debating the correct placement of a decorative bowl, only to find out she meant something completely different. She never says, "Oh, I didn't mean that." No, she lets me stumble. The comedy is in watching me try to decode her communication like a CIA agent trying to crack a secret code with no cipher. The hooks keep the audience engaged because they're wondering how far he'll go before realizing the simplicity or complexity of what she actually meant. Then there's the feedback, which is delivered with such calm efficiency, it's terrifying. She'll casually mention, "I noticed the towels were a little off this morning." And suddenly, I'm dissecting every action I took that day. I replay events in slow motion, wondering if the towels were too wrinkled, too folded, or in the wrong orientation. And the thing is, she remembers everything. She remembers the towels, the mugs, the pens, and the crumbs. I can't hide anything. Every conversation becomes an evaluation, and I'm simultaneously guilty and bewildered. The audience laughs because they recognize the absurdity. How is one person this organized, this aware, while the other is just trying to survive? And the hooks continue because every conversation carries tension. She doesn't have to yell or even raise her eyebrows. She just speaks, and I'm immediately on high alert, scanning for hidden meanings, subtle implications, and invisible rules. Even questions that seem mundane, "Did you take the trash out?" can carry a hidden agenda. Timing, completeness, and efficiency all matter. Start overanalyzing my response like it's a diplomatic negotiation. The audience is engaged because they want to see if I'll survive the conversation without creating a new domestic crisis. There's the absurdity of trying to match your communication style. I'll attempt to sound precise, professional, eloquent, and it backfires every time. I'll say something like, "I will attempt to optimize the placement of household objects as per your guidelines." And she'll look at me like I just proposed launching a rocket into the living room. Communication in marriage, in her world, is about efficiency, clarity, and anticipation of needs, while in mine, smart, it's about fumbling, over-explaining, and hoping I didn't break any invisible rules. The audience is hooked because every misstep is relatable, and every attempt at understanding sets up the next punchline. The most engaging part, you never know when a simple question will escalate into a full-blown mission impossible. She might ask something seemingly benign, and suddenly I'm decoding multiple layers of implied expectations, unspoken history, future predictions, all while trying to maintain my dignity. The tension, the humor, the suspense, it keeps viewers glued, wondering which ordinary household conversation will become the next comedic disaster. How I'll manage to survive it. The rules in marriage are constantly evolving. My wife is the one updating the handbook without ever telling me. One day, something seems fine, perfectly acceptable, completely within the boundaries of domestic law, and the next day it's suddenly wrong because the rules have changed overnight. Smart. I'll walk into the living room thinking I've finally mastered the art of folding blankets and arranging pillows. She'll casually mention, "Oh, we don't do it that way anymore." And I stop. I freeze. I look at the blankets like they've betrayed me. I thought I had learned. I thought I had passed the test. And now, without warning, the entire system has been updated, and I'm the only one who didn't get the memo. The audience laughs because they instantly recognize that feeling, thinking you understand the world, only to find out someone else quietly changed all the rules while you were sleeping. And the changes aren't always logical. I've seen the coffee mug placement rule change 3 times in 1 week. Sometimes it's about symmetry. Sometimes it's about proximity to the sink. Other times it's about what feels right in the light of day. There is no training session, no notice, no orientation. You just find yourself in the middle of a policy shift, scrambling to comply while she walks past calmly, fully aware of the chaos she's created. I've learned that when she says, "We need to adjust a few things," it's never a few things. It's a full-scale review of every object I've touched in the last week. The humor is in the contrast, her calm authority versus my panicked improvisation. The audience watching me try to keep up and failing spectacularly. Then there's the unpredictability factor. You never know when a new policy will appear. One day the trash cans must be placed a certain way. The next day, it's the timing of when the laundry is folded. I'll follow all the old rules perfectly, thinking I'm doing a great job. She introduces a subtle new expectation, and suddenly I'm in violation without even realizing it. That's the beauty of this comedy style. The audience is laughing because they've all been blindsided by unexpected rules in life, and seeing it amplified in marriage is hilarious. You're constantly second-guessing yourself, adjusting behavior you thought was correct, and still somehow missing the mark. And the stakes feel high even when they shouldn't. It's not about life or death, it's about domestic harmony. But the way she communicates makes it feel like a critical evaluation. She'll say something like, "We need to make sure the living room is aligned properly." And I instantly interpret that as a 30-point performance review with possible consequences if I fail. I start rearranging furniture, adjusting decorations, and even moving rugs, all while trying to predict her preferences, which change faster than I can keep up. The audience is hooked because they can see the tension build. They're waiting for the inevitable misstep. Even the small victories are fleeting. Correctly interpret a new guideline one day, feel proud, and then wake up to a subtly shifted expectation. Maybe the towels must now be folded in a diagonal instead of a rectangle. Maybe the cereal boxes are no longer acceptable in the pantry. Every day is a new challenge, a new set of invisible rules. The comedy comes from watching me navigate this constantly changing environment, reacting with exaggerated confusion, and trying to explain myself in ways that make no sense. Because the audience wants to see if I'll ever catch up, if I'll ever understand the updated policies, or if I'll keep stumbling into minor violations that feel catastrophic. The tension, the humor, the absurdity, it all builds layer upon layer, keeping viewers glued to see what new rule or expectation will pop up next and how I'll creatively fail to meet it. The most challenging and hilarious part of marriage is trying to keep up with my wife's emotional intelligence while operating at my own, much lower level. She has this uncanny ability to notice everything, every detail, every mood shift, every unspoken thought, and respond accordingly like a highly trained analyst. I, on the other hand, operate in a simpler mode, eat, drink, and hope I didn't break anything. The contrast between her precision and my obliviousness creates endless comedic tension. I'll say something completely innocuous. I'll do the dishes later, and she immediately reads it on 10 levels: tone, timing, body language, and intent. And suddenly, I'm in trouble, not because of what I said, but because of how I said it, when I said it, what it implies about my entire character. The audience laughs because they recognize the absurdity and the relatability. You can never fully match your spouse's emotional radar, no matter how hard you try. There's the unpredictability of consequences. Every action I take carries hidden weight. I might rearrange the living room, thinking I'm doing a great job, only to realize she interprets it as a subtle critique of her decorating skills. I might pour myself a drink, and she reads it as a violation of some unspoken rule about timing, hydration, or shared resources. Every time I think I understand her perspective, she evolves, adjusts, or adds nuance that I could not have anticipated. The humor comes from my constant struggle to adapt, to interpret signals correctly, and to make decisions that won't backfire, all while the audience hangs on, wondering which everyday action will become the next source of hilarity. Communication becomes a minefield. She'll phrase things perfectly, calmly, and politely. The underlying meaning can be a test of my awareness and responsiveness. If I respond too quickly, I seem careless; too slowly, and I seem indifferent. If I overanalyze, I'm overthinking. If I underthink, I'm negligent. It's a balancing act that is impossible to master, and watching me flounder through these scenarios is the core of the comedy. The hooks keep building because viewers are engaged by the tension. Will he misstep? Next. How will he interpret the subtext? How many layers of nuance will he miss before realizing he's in deep trouble again? And it's not just small gestures. My wife can turn an everyday situation, pouring coffee, folding laundry, moving a chair, into an emotional analysis that spans the entire history of our marriage. She notices patterns, inconsistencies, deviations from expectations that I didn't even know existed. I'll try to explain myself, what I think is a logical justification, and she listens calm and measured, like she's evaluating my reasoning skills. The comedy comes from the fact that my explanations are almost always irrelevant to her real issue, which she's silently cataloged for future reference. The audience loves this because they can see the absurdity of my attempts to survive under these rules, knowing full well that I will fail repeatedly. Then there's the constant fear of unintended violations. I might laugh at the wrong time, pause too long, or fail to anticipate a response she hasn't yet articulated. Suddenly, I'm under review. And while she's calm and collected, I'm panicking internally, listing every possible transgression I've committed since the wedding. The humor is enhanced because the audience recognizes this exaggeration. They've been in situations where their actions are overanalyzed. Now it's amplified in a domestic comedy setting. Multiplying because every small interaction becomes a potential comedic goldmine. Never know which thoughtless action will trigger a full-scale emotional audit, which question will require a multi-layered explanation, or which gesture will be misinterpreted. The suspense, combined with the relatability of trying to navigate someone else's emotional intelligence while barely understanding your own, keeps viewers glued, laughing, and waiting for the next perfectly ordinary moment to turn into a hilarious disaster. And that's the thing about marriage. You think you're just living with your spouse. Really, you're working under a full-time boss who somehow knows everything you've ever done, everything you're about to do, every tiny thing you forgot to do 3 years ago. My wife doesn't have to raise her voice. She just asks a question, or tilts her head, or even smiles, and suddenly I'm scrambling like a guy who forgot to submit his TPS reports. And somehow I'm still in the game. And the funniest part is, I know she could fire me from the role of competent adult at any moment, but I keep showing up, trying to figure out the invisible rules, adjusting blankets, folding towels, double-checking my snack strategy like it's a high-stakes project. And I love it. I love her. I love the chaos, invisible policies, and the endless performance reviews. Because at the end of the day, even though I may never fully understand the handbook she's writing on the fly, I know one thing. This is the best boss I've ever had, and I'm happily trapped under her management forever. Just when I think I've figured it all out, when I think I finally know the policies, the rules, the expectations, she smiles, maybe asks me to move a pillow or rearrange a mug, and I realize, oh, the handbook has been updated again. That's when it hits me, this story isn't over. Not even close.